By heading southwest from the Chased Acres Dairy Farm, we eventually reach one of the largest radioactive areas in the capital Wasteland, the Greener Pastures Disposal Site. It doesn't really have the name it should have though. If anything, it should have been called the Greener Pastures Dumping Site, because everywhere you turn, there's radioactive barrels and festering toxic sludge. The culprit is the MDPL 13 power station, and can be seen to the southwest with its trio of smokestacks standing tall. More on that place later. As for now, we have this glowing pasture to play with. Among the waste we find a military truck dropping off a fresh batch of barrels. Shame on you. Then we have 2 containers that you'll want to visit, one of which has been converted into a makeshift shack that's completely resistant to the radiation. Beside the silo door are warnings. Stop. Do not enter. Ignoring those and going in, we find the unique corpse of a Wasteland recluse. On some occasions, the recluse may be alive and hostile to the player. If you have the Lawbringer perk, he'll drop a finger, which makes him a bad person. So maybe he became a recluse to escape his past. What did you do? Inside his pockets are chems and a radiation suit. You'll want to pick that up if you don't have one already. As for the loot, Stimpaks, Radaway, Radex, bullets, and a DC Journal of Internal Medicine. The only thing that doesn't make sense is how the recluse came to pass. We don't find any food or water inside the shack, so perhaps he died of dehydration. It could have been intentional, but it could have also been a case of getting trapped by the Mr. Gutsy, who, before we came along, guarded the perimeter. How do you think he died? Let me know in the comments below. The other container is your typical run-of-the-mill shipping container, filled with more barrels, but there's also a body of a scientist. She has another radiation suit you can take, and just beside her body is a big book of science. I took both and was a little creeped out by how twisted her neck was. That's better. The last thing of interest here in Greener Pastures is the office building to the western side of the area. Outside the office are more barrels on what appears to be the loading bay. I can't imagine the barrels being taken away from the office, so they must have been dropped off here. Taking the door inside leads to a large office with 2 rad roaches. Do you hear that? Engines. After all of this time, the machines are still receiving power, most likely coming from the nearby power station, although the power lines don't seem to be connected, which makes me think the cables delivering the power are below ground. On the desk we find the Agility Bobblehead. It's been quite a while since we've seen one of these. The inscription reads, "Never be afraid to dodge the sensitive issues." Sounds easy enough. Around the office are some more goodies. The terminal is just for opening the safe, and inside are these. And then we have a Nuka-Cola Quantum on the floor, a first aid box just beside it, and a bottle cap mine on the workbench, because where else are you going to find one? Back outside we can follow the road up to the power station, but be careful, deathclaws are a-lurking, having no doubt wandered down from Old Olney. You can also pass a flock of birds, which usually indicates a settlement or a place with frequent activity, but it can also mean something else. This particular set of birds are circling the alien crash site. Now, if I were to stray too close, the Mothership Zeta DLC will trigger and we can kiss Earth goodbye. So for now, that's as close as I'm getting. Further up the road we reach the MDPL 13 power station. These chimneys are so prominent from the rest of the wasteland and can be seen from quite a ways off. In a way, this is the Washington Monument of the North. Not because of its importance or historical value, but simply because of its visual dominance. I mean, look at that. It's hard to miss it. Before heading inside and dealing with the inhabitants, there's a much smaller building just beyond the grid of transformers that we can go to first. This substation has a very peculiar occurrence upon entering. Let's see if you notice it. Did you see it? Outside, the compass was pointing west, but as soon as we enter, the compass points north. Very strange. Although this also happened back at Greener Pastures when we entered the office. That time it changed from west to south, and I think it has something to do with the radiation levels interfering with the area, rather than it being bad game design. Kudos to those of you who did notice or already knew that little tidbit. Well done. The inside is pretty dark, but we can see the flickering green screen of a terminal. I feel like I say this in almost every video, but it keeps happening. The terminal's only purpose is to unlock the safe. Continuing around the room in an anti-clockwise fashion brings us to the workbench. On top is one of 3 schematics for the railway rifle, a Nuka-Cola Quantum, and another bottle cap mine. There's also a first aid box, but enough about the substation. As for the big guy, there are 2 entrances, the main door and the loading bay door. I decided to use the main door like a normal person and was greeted by a familiar sound. Ghouls. Now I thought about taking them out the old-fashioned way, but then I realized the terminal, and wouldn't you know it, it has another use other than opening a locked safe. I activated the turret, reconfigured the targeting parameters, and listened to the sound of a job well done. As the fighting outside grew quiet, I decided to search the room and found 3 boxes of sugar bombs and 3 bottles of Nuka-Cola. Now, despite the sound of a ghoul frantically trying to run around, the turret did not shoot. I was certain the ghoul had glitched through the floor or wall and was now somewhere out of reach. I poked my head through and not only witnessed the turret shooting a glowing ghoul in the back, but also pulled off the luckiest shot of all time. That's right, that was a double critical hit. My very first, and no doubt my very last. Even with those 2 ghouls taken care of, I could still hear another one up somewhere on the floor above me. Before heading up, I deactivated the turret and had a quick look around down here. At the northern end, we can climb the ramp to be on the other side of the loading bay doors, where we find bottle caps and a first aid box. With that brief interlude over, we can proceed up the stairs to the final ghoul, who, unlike other ghouls, doesn't know how to open doors. I thought I could have a little fun, drop down a bottle cap mine, open the door and watch the show. I think that because the turret can become hostile, and in no way, shape or form could be considered as a companion, the mine instantly detonates when thrown too close. Yay, broken arm. Some would say I hadn't learnt my lesson, others would say I knew what I wanted. Either way, the ghoul went boom, and I could head on through to the final room without any further distractions. The first thing that I noticed was the pile of barrels in the corner of the room. I have no idea why these would have been lugged all the way up here, but maybe the terminal can tell us more. Sadly, no. All it does is you know what. Inside the safe are various pieces of loot, and lastly, on the table beside the terminal, we can find the not so cleverly named unique power fist, Fisto. Not to be confused with that Fisto.
I am programmed for your pleasure.
No, don't do it!
The power fist doesn't have a unique ability such as the shocker, but it does have the highest base damage of all melee weapons, so there's that. It's difficult to understand exactly what happened here, since there are no notes or terminal entries for us to read. But I think it has something to do with the military. They most likely took control before the bombs fell, or directly after, set up a perimeter, moved as much of the waste as they could down to Greener Pastures, and then became ghouls. Who knows? And there we have it, the Greener Pastures disposal site and the MDPL 13 power station. But let's not forget the Agility Bobblehead, Railway Rifle Schematic, and Fisto. If you've enjoyed the video, then consider leaving a comment, liking the video, sharing it with a friend, subscribing to see more, and enabling notifications to avoid missing any activity. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next adventure.